My father's partner stole his life savings, so I uncovered crimes that sent him to prison for life. My father called me at 2 a.m., something he'd never done in my entire life. His voice was shaking so badly I could barely understand him. He kept saying the same thing over and over. It's all gone. 23 years. It's all gone. I drove to his house in my pajamas, running every red light. When I got there, he was sitting at the kitchen table with bank statements spread everywhere, his hands trembling over numbers that didn't make sense. His business partner of 2 decades, a man named Lawrence Whitfield, had cleaned out their joint accounts and vanished. Everything my father built since I was a kid, gone in a single wire transfer. My father and Lawrence started their construction company when I was 5 years old. They built schools, hospitals, community centers. Lawrence was at every birthday party, every graduation. He gave the toast at my wedding. My father trusted him with his life. That trust cost him $1.2 million. The police said it was a civil matter. The bank said the transfer was authorized. Lawrence's phone was disconnected, his house was empty, and nobody seemed to care that my father's retirement had been stolen by a man he called his brother. I watched my dad age 10 years in a single week. He stopped eating. He stopped sleeping. I found him crying in his truck one morning, and something inside me broke. I wasn't going to let this destroy him. I started digging into Lawrence's past, and what I found made me sick. He'd done this before, 3 times in 3 different states, different names, different partners, same playbook. He'd find a trusting business owner, build a relationship for years, then drain everything and disappear. I found old news articles, court documents, victim testimonies. One man in Ohio lost his home. A woman in Georgia had a stroke from the stress. Lawrence had been running this con for 15 years, and nobody had ever connected the dots because he changed identities every time. I printed everything and created a timeline. Then I hired a private investigator with money I didn't have. The PI found Lawrence in Arizona, living in a gated community under the name Victor Ashford. He was already partnering with a new victim, an elderly man who owned a plumbing company. I felt my stomach turn. He was doing it again. I contacted the local police and they said they'd look into it, but nothing happened. I called the FBI and got transferred 6 times before someone finally listened. The agent, a woman named Special Agent Dowling, told me to send everything I had. 2 days later, she called back. Her voice was different now, urgent. She said they'd been tracking someone matching this description for years, but could never pin him down. My research had given them what they needed, but Lawrence wasn't going down easy. Somehow he found out someone was investigating him, and he started making moves. He called my father's remaining clients and told them lies about the company. Said my dad was the one who committed fraud. 3 contracts got canceled in a week. Then he called my dad directly. I was there when it happened. My father put him on speaker, hands shaking. Lawrence's voice was calm, almost amused. He said if anyone kept digging, he'd make sure my father spent his final years in prison for crimes Lawrence had set up to frame him. He said he'd planted documents, forged signatures, created a trail that pointed straight at my dad. I recorded the entire call on my phone. The FBI moved faster than I expected. They executed a search warrant on Lawrence's Arizona home and found everything. Not just evidence of the fraud against my father, but records of 11 other victims across 8 states. They found fake identities, forged documents, offshore accounts totaling over $8 million. They also found something nobody anticipated. In his basement, they discovered files on his partner's families, photos of their children, their homes, their daily routines. He'd been collecting information in case anyone ever fought back. There were photos of me, of my wife, of my son's elementary school. The agent called me personally to tell me what they'd found. My hands went numb. This man had been watching my family for months. Lawrence was arrested 3 days later. The trial lasted 4 months. Victim after victim testified about destroyed businesses, broken marriages, health crises caused by the stress of losing everything. My father sat in that courtroom every single day. When Lawrence was found guilty on 31 counts of fraud, identity theft, and intimidation, my dad didn't cheer. He just closed his eyes and exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for a year. I put my hand on his shoulder, and for the first time since this nightmare started, he looked like himself again. The judge called Lawrence a predator who weaponized trust, someone who'd spent decades destroying lives without a shred of remorse. Lawrence Whitfield received 45 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole. My father got $340,000 back from the seized assets. It wasn't everything, but it was enough to keep his company alive. He's rebuilding now, slowly, with a new partner he made me vet for 6 months before signing anything.